Hello and welcome to VGC Progress Report. I am Quinn, and I am going to be kind of going over my thoughts about Series 5 and VGC 2020 with the new edition, with all the new Islemons that are returning, and basically talking about how I think that'll shape the meta and how that'll affect my team building process going forwards. But hello, welcome to VGC Progress Report. This first episode of VGC Progress Report. Kind of weird to be doing like a kind of analysis when I haven't really shown anything. A little bit about my accolades, not a ton. I started this season of VGC very competitively. Did a couple PSs in Alberta. I placed top 3,000 in the latest mid-season showdown. I placed top 3,000 in the May IC, and I came second place at the largest MSS in Alberta history. Unfortunately, I could not prove myself elsewhere because VGC 2020 got cancelled, essentially. But I've been improving steadily. I make it consistently high on the ladder on Showdown as well. I've been top 700, top 500 for a couple of days, kind of deal, fluctuating in between that area. So I'd like to think I'm pretty good, so I have a kind of decent understanding. My typical playstyle is Trick Room. That in mind, going forwards with how I perceive Pokemon, I typically end up playing Trick Room or like slower offense. So that's my preferred playstyle. But yes, we got a bunch of new Pokemon. These are all of the returning ones minus Exeggutor and the Alolan Exeggutor, because I forgot to put them on here. But starting off in garbage, we'll go over why these guys are garbage. Dedenne doesn't really offer anything, but like Nuzzle spam. Really, you could run Cheek Pouch Starf stuff, but it's not super viable. It's more of a gimmick, but I don't think it's enough of a usable gimmick to be considered a gimmick on this. Clauncher can be used on Trick Room. I think its job is done better by other Pokemon, so I don't think Clauncher is very good. Emolga, same thing as Dedenne. Lopunny doesn't have its Mega. Luxray has Intimidate, and that's about all it has going for it. Blissey can't do anything. Miltank can't do anything. Skarmory can't do anything. Dunsparce can't do anything. Tauros has Intimidate. Was good. I think at some point it got used a little bit. It could be better now with Max, but I don't see it being very good. Just because its move pool is kind of shallow. And it doesn't really offer a lot outside of Intimidate with its other abilities. I think it's Sheer Force, which might be alright now that it can max, but I don't know for sure. Pinsir, kind of a bad sweeper. Starmie doesn't do anything. Chansey doesn't do anything. Tentacruel doesn't do anything. And Sandslash, it's kind of lame. I think the most it can really do is Sandveil shenanigans, but max moves don't check accuracy. It doesn't really offer a lot of offensive pressure outside of that. Next into like the gimmicks, I can see these guys being used, but not like super effective. Like you could use them effectively in the right hands. They could do something, but not like they're not going to define and change the meta, or you're not going to see them relatively often. Because they're lacking something. Like Lurantis, it can't max at all, so if you're left with Lurantis and you still haven't used their max and they haven't used their max as a 1v1, you lose because you're not going to be able to max, because its best ability is Contrary. And you're going to be giving up like your max Knuckle, which you're using to spam superpower. You're going to lower your attack instead of raising it. Obviously, you could use Leaf Guard, I believe is its other ability, but Leaf Guard isn't great. But you could argue a Lurantis use. I think it could be a decent enough Trick Room sweeper because it's slow, so you could just spam out superpowers later. Lycanroc Midday has No Guard, which is really nice. It has like No Guard Iron Tail, which can bop Togekiss. I don't know how much it does to Togekiss per se, like off the top of my head, but like a Choice Band Iron Tail or a Choice Band Stone Edge not missing, period, on a Togekiss seems pretty alright. Pretty decent Dynamaxer because it can boost its defense with steel and boost its special defense with ground, as well as boosting its attack and setting sand, which is nice. But it's not a super impactful Pokemon because obviously being guaranteed hit by Sleep Powder isn't great. Getting guaranteed hit by every move isn't great because you can't bank on something missing. Especially if especially with people running a lot of the new moves that are really good also have a chance to miss. Being able to just be auto hit by that is annoying. So I don't see Lycanroc Midday doing much well other than being on a gimmick team, but it could obviously surprise people. Bouffalante, it hits really hard. You could run Choice Band Reckless, do really well. Soundproof could be really good depending on how good sound-based moves are in the format, as well as I believe its other ability is Sap Sipper. Don't quote me on that. If it is Sap Sipper, then that works because Amoonguss is back. Spoilers. Amoonguss is really good, but it can work as a nice Spore blocker or Sleep Powder blocker because of that. Druddigon doesn't really offer a ton. Spams Glare really well. I really like Druddigon, and I felt bad putting him in garbage. Gonna be honest. Zoroark. This Pokemon can be alright. Its gimmick is to make you think and question. But if they didn't fix the thing that was in last gen, where you could just click on the Pokemon and then it would tell you it's Zoroark, then it's a bad Pokemon. It should be in garbage. I have not seen anybody talk about that yet, but it might. And I don't want to say it's not any better. If it is the case, it is a gimmick, because all you do is you put it on the team, you see it at team preview, and you're like, alright, now I have to think, do I want to hit the thing with the Psychic type move? Because if it's a Zoroark, I've given up a turn, and Zoroark can blast someone with its very strong dark attacks or poison attacks as well. Especially if it Dynamaxes and it loses Illusion as well, that's an issue. But I don't see it being used outside of just being a gimmick. So, yeah. Scolipede spams really fast rock slides. About it. Stoutland we talked about. I've talked about a little bit more in depth because it can be a really good maxer because it can also set its own sand with Sand Rush. However, its offenses are kind of lacking. I think it could be used as an alternate on like a sand team. Where if Excadrill won't go in as hard as you want Excadrill to go in on a team, but Stoutland has the better matchup. Like, say they have a lot more, they have a lot of water types, you would bring Stoutland over that, so you could use Stoutland's not being weak to water status, as well as having like Thunderfang to do damage like that, or you could run, and you can set your own sand with it as well, if need be. It also has Intimidate, and it's a pretty decent Intimidate user because it's got a little bit of natural bulk going for it, as well as some pretty nice offenses. So I could see Stoutland doing something. I could see it appearing maybe in a top 8 with a really good player, but it's not gonna, like, you're not gonna see it everywhere, and Little Billy couldn't use it to and have great success with it. Licky goes kaboom! That's about it. Sharpedo goes really fast. Exploud with Throat Spray I could see doing something. Not much outside of that though. Kind of just spams Boom Burst, pair it with like Exploud, or pair it beside a really strong ghost type like Dusclops to support it, and you'll do pretty well, but it's pretty much just going to be Throat Spray spamming Boom Burst. Scyther, I put in gimmick over garbage because with the prevalence of a lot of fighting types coming back and a lot of pretty good grass types, Dual Wing Beat is a new move, a 40 base power double hit move that's boosted by Technician, and Stab for Scyther could be a usable gimmick that you could see it appear as really niche answers to these things. I don't think it will be used more than Scizor, but you could see it as a niche option, especially if you're not using your Eviolite somewhere and you're really weak to fire as it is. You would rather have a Pokemon who's only singular was weak to fire than quad weak to fire. Kanga. I could see Kanga being used sparingly. Kanga has really good max potential. It has fighting moves to boost its attack. It has normal moves to lower opposing stats. It has decent enough coverage where it can be a pretty good maxer. It has natural bulk to live hits. So I could see a rise of weakness policy Kangs pop up, but I don't see Kang doing a ton like to shape a meta or anything like that at all. Tangela, if it still has Rage Powder, is really, really good. And I think I might use it on like a tiny bit of team if I don't want to use a Mungus. And I'm like, haha, Tangela. I could use it, but outside of that, I don't see it being overly used, especially because Amoonguss is back. I could see it being used a little bit more if we didn't have Amoonguss and this was like the other Rage Powder user. Because the other one is Butterfree, and Butterfree is not great now with a lot of the things that came back. Butterfree kind of got nerfed. Marowak's alright. It has Lightning Rod. It could be a decent maxer. It's significantly worse than its Alolan counterpart, but it could definitely be used and have some success without like stepping on the toes of a lot of other things, because there's like you could put it on like a rain team as the Lightning Rod user to redirect electric type attacks. You could use it to support Gyarados like that, or you could just put it on a team that you're like, I need a ground type and I don't want to use Excadrill because I already have a steel type and I don't want to increase my ground weakness or something. And you can bring a Lilliwack like that, and the Lilliwack can use very strong ground type stab to just hit things incredibly hard. So I could see a Lilliwack seeing, or not a Lilliwack, Marowak seeing some use. Poliwrath is a gimmick. You'll see it pretty much only on double poly teams. I think it's a really good Dynamaxer. You could run a Belly Drum set as well, which is really nice. Being able to as well max set your own rain and boost your attack as stab is really handy. And then being able to as well boost your special defense with ground. It is also really helpful. I think it has the tools to be decent right now. It also has Poison Jab to support Politoed as well if you're doing double poly, so you can boost Politoed's special attack while also hitting like Togekiss super effectively with Max Ooze from Poliwrath. Golduck, same thing. Can also be used as a check to weather, but not going to be used overly well, I don't think. And Alola Slash, as well as Alola Whack, are both gimmicks. Or not Alola Whack, fuck. Alola Slash is a gimmick. I got recommended a Trick Room, but then you're not using ice moves if you have Slush Rush, and Snow Cloak isn't great because max moves ignore evasion. It could be used. I might just be missing something, but I really, really don't see it being used. I don't see it as anything more than a gimmick because it hard loses to stuff like Conkeldurr and the ever-prevalent fire coverage in the meta, especially now that Burning Jealousy is a move. That's going to be very insane. As well as Alolan Executor is a gimmick. It's a Trick Room gimmick. If you want a dragon on Trick Room, you're either using that or Drampa. And Alolan Executor has Frisk, and then gives you like some item knowledge as well. So I think all Trick Room teams that were like, I want a dragon, are pretty much replacing Drampa with Alolan Executor, just because I feel like having item knowledge is better than having Berserk. In my opinion, at least. I don't have to worry about that. I don't think Alolan Executor is much better in the long run. Comfey, next into the usable tier. Comfey's a niche Trick Room setter. It's not gonna be like, it's completely usable and you'll have success with it, but it's not gonna like revolutionize Trick Room. It has priority healing with floral healing. I believe also cure status. I'm not super sure on that. Can spam recover really nicely. Draining Kiss is decent. with priority, and you trying to just set Trick Room, spam Floral Healing into the thing that you're beside. Obviously, it's in deep competition with stuff like Porygon or Dusclops, but if you really want a Fairy type for your Trick Room team and you want it to be on a defensive one that can set Trick Room itself, Comfey's not a bad Pokemon to use. Both of the Lycanrocs kind of treat them the same. They have very similar stats. One of them has Tough Claws, the other does not, and has Sand Rush. A little bit better of a sand... little bit worse is the Sand one because it is already really fast as it is, but obviously with Sand you can use it as a counter to Tyranitar and Excadrill on teams that are weak to it because it can hit them both very super effectively and will be faster than Excadrill under Sand Rush as well, because you also have Sand Rush and your higher base speed is nice. The other one, Excel Rock, is really strong. Priority Rock type move that can't miss, that is also Tough Claws boosted, is very, very good. I could see both of them Dynamaxing and having success, but they're just a little bit not bulky enough to be a really good Dynamaxer, but I think they're definitely usable in the metagame. At the moment, they kind of work as sand counters as well as a Togekiss answer. Togekiss, I feel, is going to adapt a ton going into this format. I feel like it'll stop. I feel like it might drop Air Slash to run Heat Wave to also hit Magnezone. We'll go over get to Magnezone. But I could see it dropping Air Slash for Heat Wave just to be able to hit a little bit more things super effectively. It could also start running Grass Knot for things like Slowbro and Politoed and stuff like that if you want an offensive Togekiss. Next is Dragalge. Dragalge is a very, very offensive-based Pokemon. I think it works really well as a Trick Room Dynamaxer. So you and I said about Load Executor. This is the other Pokemon it's in contention with for Trick Room Dragons. This one, though, is weak to ground, which means you can use Bulldoze Dusclops and proc a weakness policy on it, and just have it go to town on teams with adaptability, as well as boosting its special attack even more with Max Ooze. I think Dragalge has hella potential in this format to do really, really well, because it will bop Dragapult and bop Togekiss, as well as not being super afraid of stuff like Tyranitar and Excadrill under Trick Room, as well as with proper support. And because of it having access to water, it can also set Rain to overwrite Sand, so something else can go in later. But I think Dragalge will have a nice niche in the meta, and big enough niche where it'll actually be used more than some of the gimmick niches. Mienshao just became a really good support Pokemon. Mienshao has access to coaching, which is Decorate but bulk up. So you boost the attack and defense of a Pokemon. So you could see Mienshao be paired with something like Urshifu, Conkeldurr, Heracross even, or Azu, and go to town like that. Because it has really fast Fake Out, it has access to U-Turn and Regenerator, it has coaching, which is really nice, and it has Close Combat, which is really nice stab, as well as having access to Poison Jab and Stone Edge and Rock Slide. So I think Mienshao has a pretty decent chance to become a relatively relevant, pardon the pun, I guess, relatively relevant support Pokemon in the current meta. It's not super friendly to it because Togekiss is super viable, and it's in competition for fighting types on a lot of teams. Because of that, you're not running a ton of fighting types. But I could see it definitely being used on teams that aren't super weak to Flying or Fairy, and then also would benefit from having something like really fast coaching on a team, as well as really fast Fake Out. So I think Mienshao has a pretty good chance to be very usable. I could see it moving up to good if I would move it up to good potentially, but I obviously can't tell. In past formats, it hasn't been great with just the fast Fake Out, but I feel like coaching might push it over the edge. Lilligant is a really fun support mon for Sun teams because of Chlorophyll, Teeter Dance, Chlorophyll Sleep Powder, Chlorophyll Helping Hand. I could see it being used relatively easily and just have some fun with it. I like Lilligant. If I make a Sun team, I'll probably end up running a Lilligant on it. Porygon Z. Porygon Z is interesting. It's always paled in comparison to Porygon 2. However, with Dynamax and adaptability, it can spam like spam lowering speed, which is nice, and especially helps it because its speed is kind of lacking. It's base 90. But it can also it can mess with weathers because of Ice Beam coverage. It can you can mess with terrains because of Thunderbolt. It has Recover for longevity, although you won't really be using it on it. It can also set Trick Room if you really wanted it to. I wouldn't recommend doing it, but it can. Yeah, I don't see a ton of Porygon Z, especially just in general, because it doesn't hit what it needs to hit super well. It had a little bit of a gimmick when it had Z conversion, but Z conversion's gone and it can't Omni Boost. So you might see it. It's definitely usable. It's not a bad Pokemon by any means, but it's not like stellar where it's gonna be on. You're gonna see it like every other game kind of deal. One sec. Okay. Sorry, I need to take a drink of water. Tangrowth. You know what I said about Lilligant? Applied to Tangrowth, but this time it has Regenerator and Knockoff. That's about it. And Rage Powder as well. If Tangela has Rage Powder, then Tangrowth has Rage Powder. So it has some better redirection on it. Heracross is a sweeper. If with right support, it can do really well. I think Heracross under Max can be really usable. But it requires a ton of support because it is relatively frail as well. You can also run Guts. So because if its abilities, and if you haven't revealed Moxie yet, you can be Guts, so people will be afraid to burn you. The moment that you reveal Moxie, they're going to burn you for free, but you'll have already gotten a kill, or hopefully faster than the thing that's trying to burn you. So you can just bop them like that. But you can run a Gut set as well, which is seeing Conkeldurr do a ton of work. Blocks Sleep as well, which is super relevant this meta, which is really, really nice. Excuse me. Scizor. I don't really know how I feel about Scizor anymore. Last night, we didn't know what Series 5 was. We know what Series 5 is. I made this list last night. On stream, by the way. Follow me on twitch.tv/RivalQuinn. We stream pretty much every day. I'm not streaming for the next little bit because I need some R&R, but we do stream relatively often. We do tend to just do challenges, but I made this list last night, and I said Scizor has a pretty nice potential in the metagame because of the rise of the psychic types that we got, as well as like a Moongus coming back and it being able to bop Togekiss with Bullet Punch. But the Musketeers are now legal, and Scizor struggles with the Musketeers because it can't really hurt them. Terrakion, it has the best matchup against, obviously, because it can Bullet Punch it, but it has Dual Wing Beat now, and Technician boosted Dual Wing Beat, as we talked about with Scyther, is really good, so I could see Scizor moving up to good and be actually super viable. But as of right now, I think it's mostly just a usable mon. I think its weakness to fire is really going to hurt it, as well as if it maxes, its abilities are just completely null and void because Technician will no longer boost its things, and its other ability is Light Metal, and Light Metal doesn't work when you're in Dynamax because you are already immune to weight-based moves, and nobody's really running weight-based moves right now. Anyway, Slowking! I could see Slowking be a really good Trick Room sweeper with weakness policy. Shadow Sneak with Dusclops. Magneton, if you don't want to use Magnezone, you can use Magneton and miss out on kills, but have a little bit more bulk with Eviolite and a little bit more speed with that 70 speed. That might actually be relevant. I don't know Corviknight speed off the top of my head, but it might be. If it's faster than Magnezone, that's a big deal. If it's slower than Magnezone, then it doesn't really matter. But Magneton could be used as a niche answer to stuff like Togekiss and Corviknight as well, because I know at least when I'm team building, I forget Corviknight exists. I get into a game against Corviknight, I lose to Corviknight. So yeah, Alakazam. Actually, kind of want to move Alakazam down to Gimmick. It's a sweeper, and it has nothing else going for it. All it does is sweep. It cannot max because it will die immediately. You'll get one kill with your max and then die unless you're running Focus Sash. And if you're running Focus Sash, then they'll just priority kill you. If you did not use Psychic to set Psychic Terrain. I feel like it's not great. You could use it on some teams, but it's just not like as good as I'd like it to be. In current format as well. Current format's not very friendly to it. Wigglytuff is a competitive fairy type. That's it. That's why it's really good. That's why it saw use originally in 2015? 2015. So I used in 2015 or 2014 because it was a competitive fairy type. Intimidate's not as common right now. But the max moves that lower it are very, very prominent. So I could see Wigglytuff getting some use. It also is a hard stop to both of Dragapult stabs. The only way a Dragapult beats it if it's a physical Dragapult and it's running max Steel Spike. But then it's giving up other moves that it would like to have as well. So I could see Wigglytuff being a niche answer to Dragapult, but because of how good Dragapult is right now, it's less of a gimmick and more usable on teams, as well as just because it has Gen 1 stab status, but has, or Gen 1 move pool, which means its move pool's fucking insane. So I could see it getting used a little bit. I expect to see it on some teams, especially like if you make a team and you have Intimidate, you need to make sure that you have an answer to Wigglytuff, because getting a Wigglytuff boosted to +2 special attack is very scary, especially because it can max, and with 140 base HP, it's going to be a very, very fat max Pokemon to deal with. Moving on, Urshifu Dark. Urshifu Dark is really good. Not as good as Urshifu Water, so that's why it's down here. Urshifu Water is even better, but Urshifu Dark is quad weak to Fairy, so it's a lot more manageable. But Urshifu is a very, very fucking terrifying Pokemon. Its stats aren't as godly as I thought they were going to be, but they're definitely good stats, and they're definitely something you have to be afraid of. So yeah, just keep your eyes out for Urshifu. You have to make sure you have at least a Flying or a Fairy type move on every single one of your teams, because Urshifu will abuse that and murder you. Klefki. Better Grimmsnarl, in my opinion, because it's a Steel type and not a Dark type. Grimmsnarl is good, Klefki is good. I feel like Grimmsnarl's usage will plummet and Klefki's will skyrocket. Talonflame. Priority Tailwind and Priority Max Airstream. That's about all he has going for him now. Bird Spam isn't as good anymore, but it is definitely something that we have to take into account. So primarily it's just a support Pokemon now, using stuff like Will-O-Wisp and Priority Tailwind, but definitely keep your eyes on it because it will be scary. Especially if you leave it unchecked, it will just Brave Bird you and do really big damage. Volcarona. Volcarona with proper support right now is going to be very, very strong. Its max moves are very good because it lowers special attack, which is handy, and it sets Sun, which is also very handy. It also has max Overgrowth to set Grassy Terrain, which lowers ground base power of ground type moves. You're not really afraid of ground type moves, but it is handy. Yeah, I feel like Volcarona, I don't really need to say a ton about Volcarona because everybody already knows Volcarona is good, and in doubles that still applies because Volcarona can, with right support, I feel like it can just tear through teams. Little bit unfortunate now that it doesn't have access to Fire-EM or Bug-EM, but it is still a very usable Pokemon, and I could see it pop up on Sun teams pretty commonly now. Crocodile. Crocodile is a very good Intimidator. It does very, very well in every format that it's in, except the one that Incineroar was allowed in, and Intimidate Incineroar is. So, like, he's a good Pokemon right now, especially because he's a very good Dynamaxer. Ground and Dark are very good max moves, as well as having Moxie, which is really handy, as well as Anger Point. And Anger Point will be a nice gimmick with very fast Frost Breath, because you, or Storm Throw, you auto-crit yourself, and then you're at +6 attack immediately, and then you go to fucking town on teams. I think Crocodile has a very, very good spot in this game, in the current meta as well, being that it can check Tyranitar Excadrill, and a lot of other threats like Galarian Slowbro, who we'll get to, as well as like stuff like Incineroar or Indeedee, etc., etc. Magnezone hard checks Corviknight. I think this is a very good answer to Corviknight. If you're weak to Corviknight, you could run Magnezone and not really care. You're probably going to need to speed creep it, I think, because not a lot of Magnezones are running, or not a lot of Corviknights run speed, so you can easily speed check it with Magnezone and then kill it with like a Thunderbolt kind of deal. So I would expect to see a lot more Wakan Corviknight stop popping up, but Magnezone is pretty good at just killing Corviknight. And if your team's weak to Corviknight, you can't really go wrong with Magnezone. Magnezone kind of suffers from not having Hidden Power around anymore, because you can't use Hidden Power Fire, but it is still a very good Pokemon because of its ability to trap Corviknight, as well as bopping a lot of the Water-type Pokemon that are just coming back to the game and being very good, as well as a nice answer to Milotic and Togekiss as well. I feel like Magnezone can also max, not as well as other Pokemon, but it can also max, but I feel like Specs Magnezone will just be the better set. Porygon 2. I was gonna put Porygon 2 in really good. Then Dusclops exists. So it's very difficult to decide between if you'd rather use Dusclops or if you'd rather use Porygon 2. Dusclops offers a lot more support, where Porygon 2 offers a little bit more offensive pressure under Trick Room, especially if you run like a download Porygon. In my opinion, Trace is better, but you can also run download and have a little bit more offensive pressure depending on what stat it boosts. So Porygon 2 could be used really, really well, or it could fall flat on its face and not see much usage because of how good Dusclops is. I personally really like Porygon 2. I think it's going to be very good in this current meta. But because of also Conkeldurr running around, it suffers from being weak to fighting types. So we'll see. We'll see what the meta has in store for good old Porygon 2. Alolan. I think Alolan is a very good Trick Room Pokemon right now. It has access to ghost moves, has access to fire moves, ground moves. I believe it has access to some fighting moves. Under Trick Room, this thing has been a behemoth forever. You could even earn a weakness policy set if you really wanted to, but I feel like Thick Club is obviously better. So it's just going to fucking tear through teams if left unchecked. So make sure you have something to deal with a ghost type or a fire type on your team. You should already have. Slowbro, really good Trick Room setter. Obviously in contention with the rest of the Trick Room setters that are here. Has a little bit more bulk to it and a little bit more offensive pressure to it as well. So it's kind of the middle between Dusclops and Porygon 2 in my opinion, because it can use Scald, but also has like Regenerator. I believe it has Ally Switch, don't quote me on that. But I feel like it could be used relatively easily and not really... You won't really have to support it too much to get Trick Room up. Say something like Comfey. So it's the nice middle ground between Dusclops and Porygon 2. And it doesn't require the Eviolite, which is very nice. Galarian Slowbro. Galarian Slowbro is very good. Galarian Slowbro can go first with Quick Draw. Its Quick Draw is a 20% chance to move before the target, which is really nice. And it's a poison type. It's Poison Psychic, the first of its kind, so you can pair it with Bulldoze as well and run a weakness policy set. Shell Sidearm's a really strong move. It has access to water coverage and psychic coverage, which is really nice, and Max Ooze to boost a special attack even further. It's kind of just better Dragalge in all honesty, it's better Dragalge. So Galarian Slowbro is good. It could be really good. Could be really, really good. I don't think it'll end up in like the really good tier after like a little bit of this format has developed, but it definitely could be. Water Urshifu is the strongest form of Urshifu because it is a multi-hit move, which avoids Sturdy and Focus Sash, that hits 3 times and crits all 3 times, which is insane. It's not quad weak to Fairy, which is nice. Although 60 special defense doesn't really matter a lot of the time for that. Very, very strong abilities because it ignores Protect. Very strong max form because it ignores Protect. Unfortunately, it doesn't set Rain, but I think Urshifu on Rain teams is going to become a staple and is very, very afraid, very, very scary. Amoonguss. Fuck Amoonguss. Except I also love Amoonguss. Amoonguss is one of the best support Pokemon now. You can pretty much lead Amoonguss plus a Trick Room setter, and you get Trick Room up. But I think Amoonguss Porygon 2 is going to be a route of play. But Amoonguss has Spore, which is a really strong move. It has Rage Powder, which is really strong. It has 2 good abilities in Effect Spore and Generator. Has access to Poison moves, Grass moves, Stomping Tantrum. I don't need to say a lot about Amoonguss. Everyone knows Amoonguss is good in doubles. Kingdra! Kingdra's really fucking strong right now. Kingdra got Hurricane, which means it has access to Max Airstream. Really good Pokemon. Good. Politoed makes Rain viable. Really good. Also has access to a lot of speed control. With Icy Wind, has access to Perish Song and Whirlpool, which is nice, as well as giving you the alternate win con of Perish Songing, even if you're not running Whirlpool. Which is also very handy. The one unfortunate is because Tyranitar is also very good. Leading Politoed, if you mirror Sand, as long as if you don't spec it correctly, Politoed is slower, is faster naturally than Tyranitar, so you have to make sure that you are going slower than Tyranitar to make sure that your weather is up instead of Sand. So it takes a little bit more effort, but I feel like it's super, super nice to have. Anyway, Politoed is one of my favorite Pokemon that has come back, and one of my favorite Pokemon in general. Rain is probably going to become a playstyle that I adopt into my repertoire of playstyles because I really like Kingdra and I really like Politoed. And Azumarill. Azumarill is really good. Belly Drum Sweeper with Aqua Jet and Play Rough. Yeah. So I don't really have a lot to say about it other than that it belly drums. It probably won't be seen as much this meta because it can't Dynamax easily. But I mean, with right support, if you pair this thing next to an Indeedee, a belly drum, follow me, and then when once Azu has gotten belly drum up safely, if Indeedee is still around, you spam heal pulse, you click heal pulse into it, you're back at full health, and then you have a full power Azu to Dynamax and tear through teams, which is really nice because water coverage is very nice, fairy coverage is very nice. It has access to a lot of really strong offensive moves, so Azu's a very good Pokemon. The last thing I want to do in today's episode is talk about these new rules. So, we got the Series 5 rules announced. Starting July 1st, all Pokemon in the Galar Pokedex, the Isle of Armor Pokedex, Natdex number 638 to 640, 722 to 730, are all allowed. Pokemon require the Galar mark or the Battle Ready mark. The Battle Ready mark is how you get transfer Pokemon, which is nice. And the new allowed Gmax forms are Venusaur, Blastoise, and Urshifu, as well as the Galarian starters. It is very scary. You have to deal with Terracotta again. You guys don't know what Terracotta is. Terracotta is Terrakion plus Whimsicott. Beat up into Terrakion. Dynamax your Terrakion. Go to fucking town on teams. Steamroll things like that. As well as Cobalion, I could see being really good in this meta. But that is the new rules. So welcome your new lords, Dynamaxed Urshifu, Terracotta, and probably Blastoise, actually. I could see Blastoise being really good with Dynamax now because of Gmax turret something? Turret explosion? Turret water? I don't know. But yeah, so that is today's episode of VGC Progress Report. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.